Before the world was drawn into neat lines and borders, before kingdoms were bound by walls and written laws, there were people who lived by the wind. Their homes were not fixed upon the earth but carried with them across the plains, circular tents of felt and wood, rising like white domes upon the grasslands. When the wind moved, so did they. When the grass grew thick and green, they stayed. When it thinned, they followed the horizon. Tonight, we travel into that vast and open world, the Mongol steppe. It is a place of motion and silence, where the sound of hooves is the rhythm of life. The steppe stretches endlessly across what is now Mongolia, northern China, and beyond, a rolling sea of grass that seems to have no edge, only color and distance that shift with the sun. By day, the air shimmers with heat or freezes into stillness. By night, the stars hang low and clear, so many that the darkness itself feels alive. This is not the empire of marble palaces or golden crowns. This is a world where power begins with endurance, where to survive a winter storm or a long drought is to claim victory enough. Here, children learn to ride before they can walk. Here, families drink the milk of their animals and sleep beside them for warmth. Here, every object, every gesture, is shaped by the necessity of motion. A pot light enough to carry, a bow strong enough to bend on horseback, a life built upon the idea that nothing endures except the sky and the wind. And yet from this quiet and unforgiving landscape, one of history's most astonishing empires was born. It would stretch farther than Rome, longer than Alexander's, and connect more of the known world than any before it. It was the Mongol Empire, vast, mobile, and disciplined, an empire born not from cities, but from tents, not from fortresses, but from riders. But we will not rush into battles or coronations. This is not the story of conquest told in thunder and blood. It is the slower, quieter story of people, habits, and the strange peace that exists between wars. We begin, as all things do on the steppe, with the riders themselves, the men whose lives were spent in motion, whose horses carried the empire across continents, and whose days began and ended with the wind. So, as you listen, let your breath slow. Imagine the steady rhythm of hooves across open ground, the low creak of leather, the soft rustle of grass. The world around you fades into stillness. And now, we ride into the 13th century, into the heart of the steppe. Why it sucked to be a Mongol horse archer. Imagine yourself waking in the pre-dawn dark. The air is heavy with cold, sharp enough to sting the skin. You lie wrapped in a blanket of felt, the coarse wool scratching at your neck. Somewhere nearby, you hear the slow, familiar breathing of your horse, and the quiet hum of voices as others stir. The fire has long since burned to embers, and the smell of smoke lingers, faint, comforting, constant. You sit up and push aside the flap of your tent, stepping out into a world painted in the pale gray light of morning. The grass crunches under your boots, stiff with frost. Your breath hangs in front of you, a thin cloud that drifts away on the wind. Across the plain, other tents stand low and round against the earth, their roofs shining faintly with dew. Horses move among them, quiet shapes in the half-light, their manes stirring like river grass in the breeze. This is your home, the open land, endless and unbroken. It has no roads, no fences, no walls, only the line of the horizon, the same in every direction. It is both freedom and confinement, vast, yet with nowhere to hide. As a Mongol archer, your life begins early and ends late. There is always something to do: feeding horses, checking bows, tightening harnesses, tending fires. Your body moves through the day in rhythm with the animals, your senses attuned to small things, a change in the wind, the distant movement of herds, the faint sound of thunder that might mean a storm. You begin your morning by milking the mares. The milk is collected in leather sacks and churned until it ferments into arag, a sour, fizzy drink that sustains life here. Its sharpness cuts through the cold, and though it is never exactly pleasant, it is filling. Breakfast is simple. Dried meat, perhaps a handful of curds, sometimes nothing at all. Food is fuel, not pleasure. By the time the sun begins to climb, the camp is already stirring with motion. Children chase foals, their laughter carried by the wind. Women gather dry dung for the fires. Men test their bows, each one a weapon of layered horn, sinew, and wood, curved and powerful. It takes strength to pull it, and skill to shoot from horseback. Every man learns these things young. By the time a boy can ride, he can also fire an arrow with deadly precision. Your bow is more than a tool, it is a companion. You care for it constantly, protecting it from moisture, adjusting the string, oiling the grip. In the steppes' dry air, it can crack. In its cold, it can stiffen. You learn to adapt, to feel its tension through your fingertips. It must bend with you, obey you, become an extension of your will. The horse, too, is a partner. Mongol horses are small, thick-bodied and strong, able to survive on almost nothing. They graze freely, even though snow, scraping the ground with their hooves to uncover grass. Each rider keeps several, one for travel, one for battle, one to rest. Their milk provides food, their hair is used for rope, their hide for clothing and harness. To harm a horse without reason is unthinkable. They are life itself. When you ride, you carry everything you own: your bow, your quiver, a knife, a flint, perhaps a few days' worth of dried cheese. Your armor, if you have any, is made of leather, layered and hardened with lacquer. It offers some protection, though not much. You trust instead in speed, agility, and the sheer unpredictability of movement. The Mongol army was not built on strength alone. It was built on precision and patience. A march might last for days, even weeks. You ride until your thighs ache, until your fingers grow numb from gripping the reins. When you rest, it is wherever you stop: a hollow in the ground, a patch of tall grass, a frozen hilltop. You and your horse share warmth under the same blanket. At night, the stars stretch endlessly above you, a frozen ocean of light. Some nights, the wind screams so fiercely that it feels alive, tugging at the edges of your cloak, howling through the bones of the earth. You learn to ignore hunger. You learn to chew leather when food runs out. You learn that thirst can be tricked by patience, that a drop of horse's blood, taken with care, can keep you alive in the desert. You do what you must, not because it is noble, but because it is necessary. The steppe teaches endurance. It rewards silence. It punishes hesitation. Every decision is weighed against survival. Every action tested by the cold logic of the land. Discipline is everything. In battle, orders are absolute. To retreat without command is death. To disobey the Khan is unthinkable. 10 men form an arban, the smallest unit of the army. If one flees, all 10 may die. It sounds cruel, but it builds a kind of trust, a certainty that no one will break rank, that no one will leave you behind. When war comes, the steppe seems to empty. Entire clans vanish into the horizon, gathering at secret points, forming into columns of riders that move like smoke. Each man brings his horses, his bow, his own provisions. There are no supply wagons, no lumbering trains of soldiers weighed down by baggage. The army is fast, faster than any before it. It can appear and vanish before an enemy even realizes it is there. But most of a Mongol's life is not war. It is waiting, it is travel, it is work that leaves the body aching and the mind empty. And yet, beneath it all, there is a strange kind of peace. When the land is kind, when the herds are healthy and the sky is clear, life feels timeless. You ride across the plains, and the sound of your horse's hooves becomes like breathing. The horizon never ends, and in its vastness you feel both small and infinite. Evenings are slow, the fires burn low, and the smell of milk and smoke drifts across the camp. Children sleep early, wrapped in furs, The elders speak in low voices, telling stories of spirits and ancestors. Some believe that the souls of the dead ride with the storms, watching over the living. Others say that every gust of wind is a whisper from the past. The world feels full of unseen life. Not frightening but familiar, like old friends whose presence is simply known. You listen, eyes half closed, to the soft murmur of the fire. The night presses close, cool and endless. In the distance you hear the faint whinny of a horse, and then silence again. Sleep comes easily on such nights. Not deep but steady. You dream of riding, always riding, through grass that bends in waves beneath a pale blue sky. And in the morning you will rise once more. The same cold air, the same work, the same horizon, unchanging, eternal. It is not a life of glory or comfort. It is a life of motion, of rhythm, of endurance. The empire that will one day rule from China to Europe begins here, with men who know how to survive, where others would falter, who understand the language of the wind, and who live not by conquest but by movement. For now the empire has not yet been born. The riders move beneath the open sky, unaware of the destiny that waits ahead. But soon one man will rise from among them, a man shaped by hardship, betrayal, and the endless hunger of the steppe. His name will become legend, and it is to his story we will turn next. The rise of Genghis Khan, the making of the eternal blue sky's sun. The story of Genghis Khan does not begin with the roar of battle or the sound of galloping hooves. It begins quietly, with hunger. It begins in a small camp along the Onan River, beneath a cold, unblinking sky. A woman gives birth to a boy, her hands trembling in the wind that blows down from the mountains. The child is frail, born clutching a small clot of dried blood in his fist, a strange omen, one the people of the steppe interpret as a sign of destiny. They name him Temujin, after the blacksmith captured by his father on the same day. At this time the Mongols are not yet a unified people. They are scattered tribes, bound by kinship, trade, and occasional alliance, and just as often torn apart by revenge, betrayal, and scarcity. Life is uncertain, fragile, and often cruel. The sky, the eternal blue sky, watches over all things without mercy or favor. Temujin's father, Yasuge, is a minor chieftain, respected but not powerful. He has wives, horses, and warriors, enough to lead a small clan, but not enough to hold them securely. In the steppe, loyalty is as light as air. It shifts with the wind, with hunger, with fear. When Temujin is 9 years old, his father decides to arrange a marriage for him. Such arrangements are practical, a means of forming alliances, of securing the future. Yasuge takes the boy across the plains to meet the family of Borte, a girl from another tribe. They agree that Temujin will stay with her family for a time, to grow familiar with his future bride. When the marriage is complete, he will return to his father's camp as a man. But before that can happen, disaster strikes. Yasuge, traveling home alone, stops at the camp of a rival tribe to share a meal. They offer him food, fermented milk, hospitality, the sacred customs of the steppe. But they recognize him, and old hatreds run deep. The food is poisoned. Yasuge rides home sick, his strength fading with every mile. By the time he reaches his people, he is dying. He calls for Temujin, but the boy is still far away. When the message finally reaches him, the father is already gone. With Yasuge's death, everything changes. Power in the steppe is personal. Without a strong hand to hold it, it slips away like sand through fingers. The tribe abandons his family, leaving them alone in the wilderness. Temujin's mother, Hoelon, gathers her children and stands before the departing riders, shouting curses, her voice sharp with rage and grief. But no one looks back. They are left with nothing. No herds, no allies, no protection. The open steppe, once their home, becomes a prison without walls. The family survives by digging for roots, catching fish with crude traps and scavenging whatever they can. There are nights when the wind howls so hard it seems to scrape the stars from the sky. Temujin grows thin, his ribs visible beneath his skin, his hands cracked from cold and work. He learns early that survival is not given, it must be taken. It is in these years that something hardens inside him. He becomes quiet, watchful. He studies people, how they speak when they hesitate, what makes them angry. He learns that words can be sharper than blades. He learns that leadership begins not with command, but with attention. One night, as the fire burns low and the younger children sleep, Holan tells her son of his father's spirit. She says the spirit of Yasuge rides with the wind now, watching, waiting for his son to claim his place. Temujin listens in silence. He looks out across the steppe, the dark shapes of hills rising like ghosts against the starlit sky. He feels small, but also, somewhere deep within, a spark of purpose begins to stir. Years pass. Temujin grows tall and strong. He learns to ride and hunt, to wield the bow and the knife. He also learns to endure humiliation. At one point, a rival clan captures him. They place a wooden collar around his neck, a kang, heavy, choking, meant to mark him as a prisoner. He sleeps in the dirt, bound like an animal. The shame burns deeper than hunger ever did. But even in captivity, he observes. He notes which guards are cruel, which are careless, which speak too much. One evening, as the camp relaxes into sleep, he slips away. A family loyal to his father helps him hide beneath their furs until night falls. He escapes into the dark, running barefoot across the frozen earth. The collar cuts into his skin, but he keeps going. When he finally breaks it free, he stands alone beneath the stars, free again, but changed forever. Freedom, he learns, is not the same as safety. It must be defended, constantly with cunning and strength. Over time, he gathers followers, men who, like him, have been betrayed or cast out. Some come from old alliances, others are bound by nothing but desperation and faith. He does not lead them with promises of wealth, but with fairness. He divides spoils evenly. He punishes betrayal without hesitation. He listens to advice, even from those of lower rank, an unusual trait among steppe chieftains. In return, they give him loyalty, not forced, but chosen. Among them is Jelmi, who once saved his life by sucking poisoned blood from his wound. Jibe, a warrior who once fought against him but impressed Temujin with his courage. And Boorchu, his earliest companion, who had followed him since boyhood. Together, they form the nucleus of what will one day become the most disciplined army in the world. Temujin begins to unite the clans. He sends messages to old rivals, offering peace and alliance. Some accept, others mock him, calling him the son of a fallen leader. He answers insult with swift retaliation. His methods are direct, but his strategy is subtle. He understands that unity requires both strength and justice. When a chieftain defies him, Temujin strikes hard, but once victory is won, he forbids his men to pillage or kill indiscriminately. He absorbs defeated warriors into his own ranks, reorganizing them not by tribe, but by tens, hundreds, and thousands, breaking old loyalties, creating new ones bound to him alone. It is an innovation so effective that future empires will imitate it for centuries. Through the 1180s and 1190s, his power grows. Each battle leaves him stronger. Each winter brings new followers. Stories spread of a leader who rewards courage, who shares the hardships of his men, who forgives the weak but never forgets betrayal. The steppe, once a chaos of warring clans, begins to bend toward order. Yet even as he rises, his past haunts him. The memory of his father's poisoning, his family's exile, the years of cold and hunger, all remain. They are the iron beneath his calm. To those who know him closely, Temujin seems carved from stillness. He speaks little, moves deliberately, watches constantly. When he does speak, his words carry weight. He talks often of the eternal blue sky, the unseen force that governs all things. He believes his destiny is tied to it, not as divine right, but as a test of endurance. At last, in 1206, the scattered tribes gather along the Onan River, the same land where he was born. They have fought and bled for decades, but now they come together to acknowledge a single leader. A vast assembly, a Kurultai, is held. Under the open sky, surrounded by banners that ripple in the wind, Temujin is raised upon a white felt carpet and declared Genghis Khan, universal ruler. The moment is both solemn and strange. There are no crowns, no thrones, no temples. Only the endless grass, the whisper of wind, and the low murmur of thousands of riders bowing their heads. The sound of horses shuffling fills the air like distant thunder. He does not smile. He stands, hands clasped, eyes half-lidded, as if listening to something far away. The title is not a reward but a burden. To unite the Mongols is one thing, to hold them together will be another. In the months that follow, he begins to shape his empire. He codifies laws, the yasa, meant to maintain discipline and fairness. He forbids the kidnapping of women, punishes theft severely, and insists that all faiths be tolerated. His vision is pragmatic. Harmony within, conquest without, and conquest comes quickly. He turns first toward the north, then to the west, and finally to the cities of the south, places of stone, wealth, and walls that seem almost mythical to steppe nomads. The Jin dynasty of northern China, rich and powerful, becomes his target. The campaign is brutal and long, but it forges the Mongol army into something near unstoppable. Riders move in silence, coordinated through flag signals and smoke. They attack from nowhere, vanish, and strike again. The world begins to whisper his name in fear and fascination. But beneath the victories and the vastness of his campaigns, the man himself remains rooted in the same simplicity from which he came. Even as ruler of half the known world, he sleeps in a felt tent. He eats the same food as his soldiers. He carries no crown, wears no jewels. Power to him is not display. It is control, clarity, and endurance. Those close to him say that when he sits alone at night, staring into the fire, his expression is unreadable. Some say he speaks to the spirits of the land. Others say he simply listens, to the wind, to memory, to the quiet hum of the steppe that shaped him. When he grows older, he thinks often of his mother, Holun, and the years of hunger. He ensures her comfort, honors her memory, and teaches his sons the lessons she taught him. That strength without discipline is nothing, and that mercy, when wisely given, is stronger than fear. He dies in 1227, during a campaign against the Tangut kingdom. The cause is uncertain. Perhaps a fall from his horse, perhaps illness, perhaps old wounds reopening. He is buried in secret, somewhere beneath the vast plains. No stone marks the place, no monument announces it. Only the wind knows where the conqueror sleeps. And perhaps that is fitting, for in life he was never truly at rest. He belonged to motion, to the horizon, to the eternal rhythm of the steppe. His empire would stretch from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, yet his heart never left the open land where it began. Even now, centuries later, when the wind blows across the grasslands, the locals sometimes pause and listen. It is said that you can still hear the faint thunder of hooves, the low murmur of riders long gone, and the whisper of a voice carried on the air, the voice of the man who rose from nothing to command the world. The rise of Genghis Khan is not merely a story of conquest. It is a story of endurance, of hunger turned into strength, of loss transmuted into purpose. It reminds us that empires are built not upon wealth or chance, but upon will, quiet, steady, unyielding. And as night deepens over the steppe, the fires burn low once more. The stars turn slowly above. And you, listening, can almost feel the chill wind of Mongolia brushing against your skin, whispering of a time when one man and his horse could change the course of history. Buried secrets of Karakoram, the lost heart of the Mongol Empire. The empire of Genghis Khan, for all its vastness, was never bound by walls. It moved with the wind, a kingdom of tents and horses, of people whose homes could be packed up in a single hour and rebuilt 100 miles away by nightfall. Yet even nomads, at the height of power, crave a center, a place where the farthest corners of their realm can converge, if only for a time. For the Mongols, that center was Karakoram. Today, if you were to stand on the rolling plains of central Mongolia, not far from the Orkhon River, you would see little that suggests a great city once stood here. Just grasslands that sway like a quiet sea, the low outline of distant hills, and the occasional glimmer of stone in the dirt, the broken foundations of walls that long ago gave way to the earth. The wind hums softly through the empty land, and larks circle overhead. But more than 7 centuries ago, this place was the nerve center of the largest empire the world had ever known. Karakoram was born not from luxury, but from necessity. When Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes, his court, if one could call it that, existed wherever his tent was pitched. But as the empire spread across Asia, conquering cities of stone and empires of scholars, he realized the need for something more permanent, a seat of government, a crossroads for trade and tribute, a symbol that even the people of the endless steppe could build a world-class capital. The task would fall to his son, Ogedei Khan, who succeeded him in 1229. Ogedei was not the warrior his father had been. He was softer in manner, slower to anger, more inclined to delegate than to destroy. Yet it was his calm pragmatism that turned the Mongol Empire from a sprawling campaign machine into an organized state. In 1235, he ordered the construction of Karakoram. Imagine the scene. Thousands of laborers, craftsmen, and slaves, some brought from conquered Chinese cities, others from Persia or Central Asia, working under the vast blue sky. They lay out broad streets that radiate like spokes from a central palace. Brickmakers fire kilns by the river. Stonecutters shape marble and granite. Carpenters raise gates and towers from the timbers brought in from distant forests. The city takes form slowly, in the middle of nowhere, a strange oasis of human ambition in the ocean of grass. Unlike the capitals of other empires, Karakoram was not surrounded by thick walls at first. The Mongols still saw walls as a kind of weakness, something built by those afraid of motion. Instead, the city was open, fluid, a meeting place rather than a fortress. Its avenues were wide enough for horsemen to ride through 4 abreast. Its heart was the silver tree, a masterpiece of engineering crafted by a captured French goldsmith named Guillaume Boucher. The tree's trunk and branches were cast from gleaming silver. From its mouth flowed streams of wine, kumis, honey, and fermented mare's milk. Each stream poured into a basin carved with the shapes of mythical creatures. When dignitaries arrived at the Khan's court, servants would turn hidden mechanisms to make the tree sing, and the Khan would raise his cup as the air filled with soft, metallic chimes. For travelers arriving from far lands, the city must have seemed like an impossible dream, a place where the languages of the world mingled in the markets, where silk from China lay beside silver from Hungary, and where Persian scholars debated Buddhist monks in the shade of felt tents. It was, in a quiet way, the very soul of the Mongol experiment, a place where nomad and settler, conqueror and captive, could briefly share the same sky. Yet Karakoram was never meant to be eternal. It was built upon a contradiction, an empire of movement trying to stand still. The Mongols were not city dwellers by nature. To them, the walls of a city felt confining, the streets too narrow, the air too still. Even Ogedei, who founded it, preferred to sleep in his ger, outside the palace walls, where he could hear the wind and smell the grass. But still, the city thrived. Under Ogede's rule, it became an administrative center for the whole empire. Delegates from conquered lands would arrive with tribute, bolts of silk, precious stones, herds of horses, even people offered as servants or specialists. In return, they were given gifts and safe passage, and they left with the stories of a ruler who ruled not from vanity, but from order. The yurts of ordinary Mongols dotted the outskirts, their white domes gleaming in the sunlight like scattered pearls. Inside the city, a marketplace buzzed with exchange. You could hear the deep tones of Tibetan chants, the nasal singing of steppe shamans, the rhythmic clatter of blacksmiths, and the soft call of merchants. Spices from India perfumed the air. The faint tang of fermented milk mingled with the smell of leather and smoke. At night, the fires of the camps and palaces shimmered together, a constellation mirrored on the earth. But history moves in cycles, and even the grandest center can fade into silence. In 1260, when Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, moved the imperial capital to Khanbalik, present-day Beijing, Karakoram's fate was sealed. The empire was no longer a wandering force but a settled dynasty. The Mongols had conquered China, and now they were becoming part of it. The old capital, once vibrant and central, began to empty. Officials left, merchants followed. Within a few decades only its ghosts remained. Wind, grass, and fragments of stone. Centuries later, Karakoram would all but vanish. Time erased its walls, and its name was whispered only in legend. For Mongolian herders passing through, it was just another patch of land to graze their animals. They sometimes found odd bits of metal or broken tiles in the soil, remnants of a world they could not quite imagine. Then, in the 19th and 20th centuries, archaeologists began to search for the lost city. Early explorers came with maps, shovels, and assumptions. Many believed the ruins must belong to the Chinese or Persians, for how could nomads have built a city of stone? But the truth, slowly uncovered layer by layer, told a different story. The first major excavations revealed the palace foundations of Ogede Khan. The walls were massive, built from baked brick, with carved pillars that hinted at foreign influence, a fusion of Chinese, Islamic, and steppe architectural styles. Fragments of pottery, coins, and inscriptions emerged from the soil. One shard bore Tibetan script, another, Persian. In a single patch of earth, 3 continents seemed to meet. More discoveries followed. Bronze cauldrons large enough to cook for hundreds, iron arrowheads, golden ornaments shaped like falcons, shards of glass likely imported from far to the west. Each item was a whisper of life, a fragment of a vanished order. Even the discarded bones of animals told stories, of feasts, of rituals, of the everyday meals that sustained the great machine of empire. One of the most haunting finds was the remains of a foundry, the place where Guillaume Boucher's silver tree may have been cast. Archaeologists unearthed traces of molten silver fused to the stone floor, as if the metal had flowed and hardened there centuries ago. It seemed to shimmer faintly even under the modern light, as though it still remembered the hands that shaped it. In the 1940s, Soviet archaeologists, armed with new tools and theories, returned to the site. They mapped the streets, traced the palace outlines, and compared them to written accounts from travelers of the past. One such traveler, the Franciscan friar William of Rubruck, had visited Karakoram in 1254 as an envoy of King Louis IX of France. His descriptions proved remarkably accurate. They spoke of the silver tree, of 12 temples representing different faiths, of craftsmen from every corner of the known world, and of a city where the ruler's tent stood beside the brick houses of foreign merchants. Rubruck had written, "There are 2 quarters of the city, one of the Saracens, where there are markets, and one of the Cathians, who are craftsmen." He had marveled at how the Mongols, once thought of as simple herders, governed an empire with efficiency that rivaled any kingdom in Europe. Now, centuries later, Archaeologists confirmed his words in stone. Where he described temples, foundations of Buddhist stupas were found. Where he noted workshops, charred remains of furnaces and tools emerged. Even traces of roads aligned almost perfectly with his accounts. Karakoram was no myth. It had been real, organized, and vibrant. And yet, when you walk through the site today, or imagine yourself doing so, there is little sound but the wind. The outlines of walls are shallow, the stones worn smooth by rain and time. Wildflowers grow where the palaces once stood. Sometimes a herder passes through with his sheep, the bells of the animals tinkling faintly in the distance. The sound fades quickly into the air, swallowed by the endless openness. It's easy to think of cities as permanent, but Karakoram reminds us how even the mightiest empire can dissolve into silence. There is a strange peace in that realization, that human ambition, no matter how vast, always returns to the rhythm of the earth. The Mongols, perhaps more than anyone, understood this. Their empire was built not against nature, but with it. Even their capital, now gone, was less a monument of defiance and more a resting place in the long journey of a people who never stopped moving. Modern excavations continue, with careful precision. Each season, researchers sift through layers of sand and soil, piecing together fragments of metal, ceramic, and bone. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have revealed patterns invisible to the naked eye. Traces of courtyards, warehouses, and roads long buried. One recent survey detected faint geometric shapes beneath the grass, suggesting new districts still hidden underground. It seems that even now, Karakoram is not finished revealing itself. For Mongolians today, the site holds deep significance. It is not merely an archaeological curiosity, but a reminder of national identity, proof that their ancestors were not only warriors, but builders, diplomats, and thinkers. Nearby, the monastery of Erdene-Dzu, built in the 1580s using stones from the old city, still stands. Its white walls encircle rows of stupas, and monks chant softly in the early light. When the wind passes through the open gates, it seems to carry two voices at once, the quiet devotion of Buddhism and the echo of an older faith, the voice of the eternal blue sky. As you listen now, you might imagine walking across that field. The grass brushes your legs, the air smells faintly of sage and dust. You pause, and the silence feels vast, almost alive. Beneath your feet lies the memory of a city that once drew the world to its doorstep. You can almost hear the faint clang of metal, the call of a distant merchant, the rhythmic tapping of a goldsmith's hammer on silver. Then the wind shifts, and it is gone again, folded back into time. The buried secrets of Karakoram remind us of something gentle and eternal, that all human works, no matter how strong, eventually return to quiet. And yet, in that quiet, they are not lost. They become part of the landscape, part of the whispering earth that carries their memory onward. As night falls on the steppe, the stars appear one by one, bright and unblinking. Somewhere, far to the east, the lights of modern Mongolia flicker faintly, but here, there is only darkness and wind. You can almost imagine the shadow of a rider crossing the plain, a ghost of the empire, still moving beneath the endless sky. And in that stillness, Karakoram sleeps, timeless and at peace. Life in the great Khan's tent, inside the beating heart of an empire on the move. The wind that whispers across the steppe has always carried the same music, the soft hum of motion. Even when Karakoram rose as a capital of stone and silver, the true heart of the Mongol Empire never stopped moving. It beat beneath canvas and felt in the quiet sway of a tense frame, in the murmur of horses and the hiss of embers at dawn. Here, in the Khan's camp, the Ordo, the empire was alive. Every morning began before sunrise. The world was a soft shade of blue, the kind of stillness that exists only for a few breaths before day begins. Frost shimmered on the grass. The air held that sharp metallic scent of cold iron and dew. Within the great encampment, a low rustle stirred. Servants rising, fires crackling, the muffled thud of boots on frozen earth. The Mongol court was awake. From afar, the Khan's camp looked like a small city. Hundreds of jurs, circular felt tents, spread out in concentric rings, each positioned by rank and function. The Khan's great tent stood in the center, its white walls reinforced with layers of felt, silk, and decorated hide. It was enormous, large enough to hold 100 people, supported by carved wooden columns and draped with banners bearing the sold, the sacred horsehair standard of Genghis Khan. To step inside was to enter a world of controlled calm. The floor was laid with carpets and furs. Bronze braziers glowed softly in the dim light. The air was thick with the scent of incense, leather, and mare's milk. In the center stood the Khan's throne, not a towering seat of gold, but a raised platform covered in embroidered silk, surrounded by cushions. Around it, attendants and advisors moved with quiet precision. Every movement, every word, had weight. To the Mongols, order was sacred. Even in a mobile court, hierarchy was absolute. The Khan's tent was divided into sides, the right for men, the left for women, mirroring the balance of the cosmos. No one entered without purpose, and none spoke unless invited. A single raised eyebrow from the Khan could shift the fate of entire kingdoms. Outside, the camp was a living map of empire. To the east, herds grazed under the watch of young horsemen, their silhouettes small against the morning light. To the west, blacksmiths hammered iron in makeshift forges, crafting weapons and tools alike. In the northern ring, cooks tended great cauldrons of mutton stew, the smell mingling with the steam of boiling tea. Everywhere, motion and purpose. An army, a government, a family, all in one. At dawn, the Khan's heralds rode through the camp, calling the day's commands. Messages were carried by the YAM system, the Mongol relay network, the most efficient in the medieval world. Riders would gallop for hours, reaching a relay post, swap horses, and continue without rest across thousands of miles, from the edges of Hungary to the borders of Korea. Orders could travel faster than any empire before or after. It was this invisible web, stretched taut across mountains, deserts, and rivers, that held the empire together. In the Khan's tent, foreign envoys gathered. A Persian merchant with a silk-wrapped beard bowed low beside a Chinese scholar whose robes brushed the floor. Next to them, a trembling Russian envoy waited, his hands clasped tight. They had come from every direction, bearing gifts and tribute, carved jade, bolts of cloth, fine glass, letters sealed in wax. Each offering was laid before the Khan in silence. He would nod once, perhaps smile faintly, and the item would vanish into the hands of attendants, catalogued and stored. But more than gifts, they brought information. Every envoy, every traveler, was part of a living network of intelligence. They reported on roads, rebellions, weather, and trade. In this tent, the Khan heard the pulse of the world, its whispers, rumors, and shifting loyalties. Meals were part of this rhythm too. When the midday sun reached its peak, the Khan's household gathered for arag, fermented mare's milk, and slices of boiled lamb served in wooden bowls. There was no extravagance in Mongol cuisine, only efficiency. Food was fuel for movement. A large feast might include dried curds, roasted mutton, or game, hunted from nearby plains. Guests were served according to rank. First the Khan, then his family, then his generals, then others in descending order. To refuse food or drink was a grave insult, but to eat without waiting for the Khan's signal was worse. The sounds of the camp were their own kind of music. The creak of saddles, the clatter of pots, the laughter of children playing between the tents, and at times the deep, haunting resonance of morin-kur, the horsehead fiddle. Its notes drifted through the air like memory. long, bending tones that seemed to echo the endless horizon itself. Even the fiercest warriors would sit quietly when the instrument played, their eyes distant, as though listening to the ghosts of the steppe. In the evenings, the great tent transformed into a hall of council. Maps were unrolled, vast parchment charts inked with rivers and mountains, dotted with foreign cities. The Khan would listen as his generals argued in low voices, each tracing routes with their fingers, weighing the next campaign. Sometimes he would say little, letting the silence stretch, his gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the map's edge. Then softly, he would speak. A few words that could alter the course of nations. Plans were made, messages drafted, horses prepared. By dawn, armies might already be on the move. Yet for all its power, the Mongol court was not all war. It was also a place of art, science, and religion, though each in the Mongols' pragmatic wandering style. Buddhist monks debated with Muslim scholars, Nestorian Christians read from their scriptures, shamans burned juniper branches to speak with the spirits of the ancestors. The Khan tolerated all of them, for in his eyes, every faith held a piece of the eternal blue sky. The empire was too vast, too varied, to belong to one belief alone. This tolerance was not born of softness, but of strategy. A Mongol ruler understood that faith could rule men as surely as the sword. By respecting the gods of the conquered, he made their people loyal. By inviting foreign thinkers, he learned from them. The result was an empire that, despite its violence, also carried knowledge across continents. Printing, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, all moving along the same roads as the armies. At night, the Khan's tent dimmed to near darkness. Only the faint glow of the braziers remained, flickering against silk walls painted with scenes of horses and clouds. Servants moved silently, folding garments, pouring the last cups of tea. Outside, the stars burned sharp and clear, so bright they cast shadows on the grass. A wolf howled somewhere far off. The horses snorted and shifted. Sometimes, when the night was calm, the Khan would walk outside wrapped in fur. He would stand alone at the edge of the camp, looking out over the sleeping tents. The wind would lift the edges of his cloak, and for a moment, he was not ruler but wanderer again. A man of the plains, small beneath the endless sky. It is said that even Genghis himself would sometimes sleep apart from his generals, in a small gyr with only the sound of wind for company. To rule the steppe, one had to remember its silence. Elsewhere in the camp, life went on in its steady rhythm. Women managed the domestic heart of the Ordo, milking mares, tending fires, and managing supplies. They were the invisible backbone of the empire. When men rode to war, women ran the camps, issued orders, even negotiated with foreign envoys. A Mongol noblewoman could command thousands, own property, and control her household's wealth. In many ways, they held more practical power than women in most medieval courts. Children, too, were trained from the earliest years. By the age of 3, a child learned to ride, by then to hunt and shoot a bow from horseback. Games were lessons, mock hunts, races, and wrestling matches that built balance, endurance, and courage. At night, they listened to stories. Tales of their ancestors, of spirits, of Genghis Khan's early struggles. The past was not written in books, it lived in memory, in the words passed down by firelight. As the empire expanded, the camp grew more elaborate. Foreign engineers built portable bathhouses, cooks experimented with spices from India. Artisans crafted metal fittings shaped like dragons or falcons. Even the Khan's throne could be dismantled and carried on wagons, reassembled wherever he stopped. The Mongol state was, in every sense, a civilization on horseback, an empire without walls, but for all its motion there was an undercurrent of fragility. Power rested not in stone but in loyalty, the loyalty of generals, tribes, and heirs. Every great empire carries the seed of its own unraveling, and in the quiet between campaigns, whispers began. Brothers eyed each other across the council mats, Suns dreamed of succession. Even the peace of the night carried tension beneath its stillness. Still, for a time, the system held. The Khan's tent remained the center of the world, a portable throne room where history was written in the dust of the plains. Riders came and went, merchants brought tribute, envoys bowed low, and the stars turned above, patient and eternal. And somewhere beyond the light of the campfires, the wind moved on, carrying the scent of grass and distant rain, the same wind that had followed Genghis Khan from his first battles to the edge of the known world. The great Khan's tent was not just a home, it was the empire itself, fragile, flexible, and alive. And though centuries have passed, its image endures, a circle of white, felt beneath the vast Mongolian sky, glowing softly in the night, the breath of horses rising like smoke around it. Within, the echoes of command and laughter linger still, faint but unbroken, carried forever on the wind, the empire's roads, the lifelines of the steppe, across dust and horizon, how the Mongols connected the world. The steppe is a sea without water, a vast and rippling plain where the earth itself seems to breathe. From the saddle, the horizon never ends. It bends, trembles, and reforms like a mirage, carrying the faint shimmer of distance that only the rider can truly understand. In the days of the Mongol Empire, that horizon was a road, not a single path, but a web, an invisible system of routes, stations, and riders that stitched together the largest continuous empire the world had ever seen. These were the arteries of the steppe, pulsing with motion. Caravans of camels trudged westward under the burning sun. Riders galloped east, their horses' hooves leaving only temporary prints in the soil. Everywhere there was movement, steady, rhythmic, almost meditative in its repetition. In this endless landscape, silence was never truly empty. It was filled with the hum of distance, the faint jingle of bridles, the whisper of wind through grass. To travel across the Mongol Empire in the 13th century was to move through one of the most connected spaces in medieval history. From the forests of Rus' to the deserts of Persia, from the Great Wall of China to the plains of Hungary, the Mongols had carved a world linked not by walls or seas, but by speed. Their secret was the YAM system, a network of relay stations, supply depots, and rest points stretching thousands of miles. Every 30 or 40 kilometers, a YAM post waited, a simple compound of tents or huts surrounded by fenced corrals. Each station kept fresh horses, food, and shelter for messengers and envoys. Riders could dismount, hand over their message, and take a new mount within minutes. A decree from the Khan could travel from Karakoram to Samarkand in less than 2 weeks, carried by men who barely slept. The rhythm never stopped. Hoofbeats exchanged departure, over and over, through day and night, through wind and snow, across continents. To the modern mind, it might sound like a miracle of logistics. To the Mongols, it was simply order, the living veins of their empire. Each rider bore a paisa, a metal tablet inscribed with the seal of authority, granting them the right to demand food, horses, and passage anywhere they went. Woe to those who refused them. The Khan's messengers rode under the protection of his name. Imagine yourself as one of these riders. The air is cold, sharp with dust and distance. Your horse's breath plumes like smoke in the twilight. Behind you, the last station has faded into the dark. Ahead, the next is a faint speck of fire on the horizon. Your satchel carries messages in Persian, Chinese, and Latin, words meant for kings and generals. You ride alone, but you are part of something vast, something that never stops moving. By the light of dawn, the roads come alive again. Merchants load their camels. Traders shout to one another in a dozen languages. A caravan stretches like a small city on the move. Hundreds of beasts carrying silk, spices, porcelain, and precious stones. The Mongols did not merely conquer territory, they opened it. For the first time in history, A traveler could move from the Mediterranean to the Pacific beneath one law, one protection, one set of rules. And so they came, Armenians and Arabs, Phoenicians and Persians, Mongols and Uyghurs, all bound by trade and trust. The Great Silk Road, older than the empire itself, found new life under Mongol rule. Bandits were punished severely, tolls were regulated, bridges rebuilt. The once dangerous journey from China to Europe became for a brief century safer than it had ever been before. At every caravan stop, a small world unfolded. The smell of camel sweat mingled with that of cardamom and roasted lamb. The chatter of merchants rose above the creak of wheels and the sigh of wind. By night, they gathered around fires, telling stories in low voices of distant markets, strange cities, and the changing moods of khans. The stars above them were the same ones seen from Baghdad, from Venice, from Chang'an. Under Mongol skies, the world felt strangely smaller, but for every merchant on the road there were also scholars, doctors, and emissaries. Knowledge traveled as swiftly as goods. A Persian physician might bring herbal remedies to a court in Beijing. A Chinese astronomer might share his star charts with an Arab mathematician in Samarkand. The Mongols encouraged this exchange, not out of sentiment, but out of practicality. Wisdom was a resource, as valuable as gold, and in gathering it they created one of the first truly global networks of learning. Letters written by monks in distant Europe describe their wonder at this open world. They tell of roads patrolled by soldiers who spoke little but gestured kindly, of hosts who offered hot milk and rice, of endless plains that swallowed the sky. To these travelers, the Mongol Empire seemed both alien and strangely ordered, terrifying in its power, yet astonishing in its efficiency. Still, the road was not gentle. Dust clung to every surface, turning skin to parchment. The cold of the steppe could cut through wool and felt like glass. Sandstorms rose without warning, swallowing entire caravans in yellow haze. Travelers often spoke of the silence after a storm, that deep humming quiet that followed the wind, where even the horses seemed to listen. Along the roads, towns began to flourish. Old trading posts grew into markets, small markets into cities. Samarkand, Bukhara, and Kashgar became jewels of commerce, crossroads where the languages of Asia met and mingled. Chinese silk met Persian silver. Indian spices perfumed the air beside Russian furs. In the shade of their bazaars, deals were made in whispers, and the sound of coins was soft but constant. In these cities, the empire's invisible hand could be felt everywhere. Taxes were collected, weights standardized, crimes punished swiftly. But for most, the Mongol peace, Pax Mongolica, meant stability. A merchant who once feared bandits now feared only the price of goods and the weather. And though the empire's armies had brought conquest, its administrators brought a strange kind of calm. For a generation or two, the world was connected by horse and willpower. In the evenings, when the caravan stopped for rest, the fires lit the faces of many peoples. A Turkic guide recited poetry. A Buddhist monk prayed quietly. A Mongol guard polished his saddle. They shared dried curds and stories, each trying to make sense of how so many worlds had merged under one sky. Sometimes, in the hush before sleep, someone would play a melody on a flute, a tune that drifted through the camp like smoke, soft and eternal. Meanwhile, in Karakoram and other capitals, scribes recorded it all. They logged distances, goods, and tribute with meticulous care. Every shipment, every envoy, every animal was part of the empire's vast rhythm. And through this system, the Mongols achieved what few had before them, a world that could speak to itself. The roads also carried shadows. With traders came rumors, with soldiers, rebellion. The same routes that spread silk and sugar also carried plague. In the 14th century, Merchants traveling west from the Mongol cities of Central Asia brought more than goods. They brought death. The Black Death moved along these same roads and ships, reaching Europe within decades. The same system that had united the world also made it vulnerable. Still, for a moment in history, the roads of the Mongols were a living miracle. Imagine them now, in the cool of night, the campfires of caravans scattered across the plain like constellations fallen to earth. The air hums softly with the sound of bells tied to the necks of camels. Far in the distance, a lone rider moves, his silhouette small against the moonlight, his saddle creaking in rhythm with the beat of the horse's stride. He carries no flag, no weapon drawn, only a scroll, sealed in wax, bearing the Khan's order. Perhaps a trade permission, perhaps a summons, perhaps a treaty. He will ride through the night, through frost and fog, through valleys and wind, until he reaches another station. There, another man will take his place. The message will move on, unbroken, across the bones of the earth. This was the empire's true genius, not its conquests, but its connections. The Mongols built not only roads, but relationships, between peoples, between knowledge systems, between worlds. And when their empire finally fractured, the roads remained, faint but enduring, like scars on the skin of history. Centuries later, when travelers retraced the Silk Road, they still followed paths laid down by Mongol hooves. The post stations are gone, the horses long buried, but the rhythm lingers. The steady beat of movement, the hum of continuity, the sound of an empire that once tied half the world together. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The whisper of the wind through the steppe grass, the faint jingle of a bridle lost to time, the soft sigh of earth where hooves once struck. The empire is gone, but the roads remain, invisible, eternal, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Absolutely. We can craft segment 3, Buried Secrets of Karakoram, as a powerful, immersive closing segment for the full script. The goal will be to maintain the calming, boring history for sleep tone, make it rich and expansive enough to feel like a proper finale, and tie together the themes of the Mongol Empire, its vastness, its fleeting structures, its enduring influence, and the quiet reflection that brings the listener toward a gentle sleep. Buried Secrets of Karakoram, the lost capital of the steppe. As the sun begins to sink low behind the distant ridges of the Orkhon Valley, imagine yourself standing upon the windswept plains of central Mongolia. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of grass and dry earth. Here lies the site of Karakoram, the lost capital of the Mongol Empire, a city that once pulsed with life, ideas, and power, now almost entirely reclaimed by the quiet rhythms of the steppe. Its story is not told in glittering monuments or towering walls, but in subtle traces, whispers of memory embedded in soil, stone, and dust. Karakoram was not born of accident. Around 1235, Genghis Khan, the successor of Genghis Khan, envisioned a place that could hold together the empire's vast reach. Unlike the sprawling cities of Persia or China, Karakoram was designed to accommodate the nomadic nature of its rulers, while still serving as a hub of administration, commerce, and diplomacy. Situated on the Orkhon River, the valley provided water, pasture, and a natural meeting point for the tribes of the steppe. Its placement reflected a careful balance between mobility and permanence, echoing the Mongols' own dual nature as wanderers and rulers. The city itself, though small by modern standards, was astonishingly diverse. Traders and artisans from China, Persia, the Middle East, and even Europe passed through its gates. Imagine wandering through its streets, the soft clatter of wooden wheels on packed earth, the faint metallic scent of a blacksmith's forge, the aroma of roasted meats and freshly baked bread. You might hear a monk reciting Buddhist sutra, followed by the melodic tones of a Persian merchant haggling over silk and spices. Even within a single marketplace, the languages, customs, and attire of countless cultures intertwined in a quiet, rhythmic symphony of human life. At the heart of the city, the palace of Genghis Khan rose modestly but with elegance. Its walls were stone, plastered and whitewashed, roofed with tiles imported from China. The interior was surprisingly cosmopolitan. Carved wooden pillars adorned with intricate patterns, delicate porcelain bowls, and brass and silver decorations reflected the empire's reach. Travelers wrote of a silver tree, a mechanical wonder designed by a French artisan captured from Europe, which spouted arag, wine, and perhaps other drinks to astonish visitors. It was a symbol not merely of wealth, but of a people capable of bringing together knowledge and artistry from across continents. Yet the true wonder of Karakoram was not in its buildings, but in its atmosphere, a city that was simultaneously ephemeral and enduring. Its streets were alive with the quiet rhythm of everyday life, children practicing archery under the watchful eyes of their elders, merchants weighing coins and bargaining in hushed tones, scribes recording ledgers and inventories with careful attention. Even the ordinary, cooking, laundering, trading, became extraordinary when viewed as a microcosm of a vast empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. Time, however, is relentless. Karakoram, like the empire it represented, did not endure forever. As the Mongols expanded, their capitals shifted, moving closer to new centers of power. By the late 14th century, Karakoram was abandoned. Its stones were repurposed, its temples and palaces dismantled, and its once bustling markets fell silent. The wind swept freely across the valley, carrying with it the faint traces of a world that had once been so vibrant. Yet, even in its ruin, there remained a profound beauty, the kind that asks you to pause, to listen, and to imagine the past as a living rhythm. Modern archaeologists have returned to this quiet valley, their presence almost reverential. They dig slowly, gently brushing away centuries of soil, revealing fragments of pottery, roof tiles glazed in deep green and blue, remnants of coins, tools, and ornaments. Each shard tells a story, a fragment of human ambition, trade, and daily life. A porcelain cup might hint at a distant market in Chang'an. A coin minted in Samarkand whispers of long journeys along the Silk Road. Here, the past is not hidden in monuments or statues, but in the subtle, tactile evidence of people moving, trading, and building lives on the edge of the world. Walking among these ruins today, you might feel the vastness of the Mongol Empire in a new way. The city was once the hub of communication and governance, where envoys from Europe, Persia, and China convened, where intelligence flowed along the YAM system, the network of relay stations and mounted couriers, where decisions made under the soft light of lanterns could ripple across thousands of miles of steppe and desert. Karakoram was both a city and an idea, the tangible heartbeat of an empire whose true strength lay not in walls or armies, but in connection. Even in its decay, there is evidence of this cosmopolitan life. Archaeologists have uncovered temples and shrines, each reflecting different religions, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, illustrating the empire's remarkable tolerance and curiosity. Evidence of trade workshops, blacksmiths, and kitchens highlights the practical ingenuity of its inhabitants. Karakoram was a place where East met West, where ideas traveled faster than armies, where a single valley on the steppe became a crossroads of the medieval world. As the evening deepens and the sun sinks fully behind the hills, imagine the city at the height of its power. The streets hum softly with the movement of people, horses, and goods. The great Khan might sit within his palace, observing foreign emissaries, listening to reports from distant provinces, planning campaigns or treaties with a calm and deliberate precision. Markets bustle with merchants, the air carries scents of spices and smoke, and above it all the sky stretches wide and unbroken. The eternal Mongolian sky, as it is today, as it was then. And then, as night falls and the campfires and lanterns dim, the city sleeps. Yet in the quiet, there is no absence. Instead, there is presence. The subtle impression of history's rhythm beneath your feet. Each stone, each artifact, each whisper of wind carries the echoes of those who walked here long ago. Karakoram is gone, yet it is everywhere. In the trade routes that crisscrossed continents, in the stories of travelers and envoys, in the faint alignment of streets with the stars, and in the enduring imprint of human ambition upon the steppe. Even as you settle deeper into your own quiet space, you can imagine it. The gentle sway of tents, the muted clatter of hooves, the soft murmur of voices across the marketplace, all beneath a sky that stretches without end. The empire has vanished, yet the patterns of its life linger, carried forever on the wind. Karakoram's final secret is not its ruin, but its memory. It teaches that even in impermanence, there can be meaning, and even in silence, there can be a story. And perhaps, as your eyelids grow heavier, and your thoughts drift like the steppe wind, you too can feel that subtle, enduring pulse, the quiet heartbeat of the Mongol world, carried across centuries, still waiting for those willing to listen. In the soft, endless night of the steppe, Karakoram rests. And now, so can you.